see your mother. You were only given one. Go see your mother. And you know that you will never have another. Go see your mother. Go see your mom.
Welcome to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I'm your host, Sadia, and this is my mother, Ema. Hey, Ema.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Really busy day. Just a train wreck of a day. I'll tell you later off the air. But it was just brutal. But I made it through, and I'm pounding it out. I feel like I'm getting sick again, which sucks because I just got over being sick. But I can't. I don't have any PTO. I gotta think things happen. I wanted to talk about this week the idea of when does your child begin and when does yourself end? And how do you find that balance between losing yourself into your children? And also, how is it, being able to create personal space within this relationship?
Are you talking about, well, as a Jewish mother, we send our tentacles out and we penetrate your very mind. And you know that we have control here and beyond the grave.
Yeah, it's a Halloween episode.
I don't understand something about the Goysher Yontif. One Goysher Yontif is people scaring each other to death, and the other Goysher Yontif is someone being tortured to death.
Wow. I don't know.
I'm trying to figure that one out. Anyway, I wanted to talk about, though, I'm visiting here in New York, and there's something about New York apartment buildings that when you come in, especially delicious cooking, like all of the apartment buildings, spicy, very, pungent, delicious odors, aromas, I should say aromas rather than odors, aromas from the tenants, various tenants of different ethnic groups cooking, like especially dinner time. It smells so good.
Interesting. So nice that you dodged the question, but my point was when it comes to being a parent and someone that's been a parent for so long with so many children, how do you create those boundaries and those worlds, or it just never really exists? You kind of like have to give it up once you're a parent. That's it. It's that part of life is over.
You do need some time for yourself. You really do. The questions, especially, parents do need a little time for themselves. And like some parents will make it their business, say like once a week or maybe once every other week, to get a babysitter and to make a date night so that they can really reconnect as a romantic couple.
Okay.
And that is very necessary, whether if you don't have a lot of money, okay, so maybe you can get your parents to babysit for you or a close relative or friend so that you and your wife can get out for maybe, a couple hours, just to take a walk outside a little bit. It is necessary. Different people will manage to do that in different ways. But it is necessary to have a little. Actually, it's very good to have. I've been watching what's that, Nanny JoJo? Super Nanny,
I guess.
And some of the families that she's handled, some of the couples she's handled, she pointed out to them that one of their problems that they were so burned out with their kids was that they don't have a regular date night or regular, time just the two of them.
So I guess another similar, like a few parallel questions I have is, the idea of self-acceptance and self-expression for a child while still balancing the responsibility of parenting. You want your kids to express themselves. You want your kids to understand, to live authentically, I think. And I think you definitely instilled in us how to live authentically. But where did you find that balance from, like, okay, let's put a stop to this, let's reel it in, or it's okay the way you're expressing yourself, it's okay what you speak and what you say. Did you decide that like naturally, or was it like a subconscious thing, or?
I felt that you kids had the right to, to express your feelings, but it had to be polite. Like you don't lash out at your parents. You don't call them names. You throw temper tantrums and kick at them or something. I had a couple when the kids were little, were very, very little. I remember with um your older sister that I wasn't she when she was like getting into the toddler stage, toddler maybe 4 or 5 years old. And of course, didn't have a lot of experience by that at that time as being a parent. I was basically feeling my way around. And the first time she told me that she hated me when she was like about she had to pick up her toys and she told me she'd hate me. I got so upset. I started crying. Oh, here I gave birth to this child. I've given her so much. And she said she's hate me. Oh, I must be a horrible mother. And then, as like just a few months, a little while later, somehow I had a chance to grow away from that and realize, hey, she's just this is a kid that's just trying to manipulate you so they don't have to do their chores, they don't have to do something. So a year, I think it might have been a year after that, I told her she had to pick up her toys and she pulled the same thing. I hate you. So I said to her very calmly, you are entitled to your feelings, but you still have to pick up your toys. She got so mad that it didn't work this time.
Did you ever feel guilt or pressure to be like a perfect parent or something that?
Oh, we all do. We all do. Any decent parent, you know, feels like that guilt feeling that that I want to be the perfect parent. I'll do it. And I'll tell you, when it's so funny, like I've had occasions when parents get together sometimes. I've seen some parents who they try to put forth this picture of themselves of being the most amazing parent on the face of the earth that and then I find out later, hey, it was anything but. Gosh, I remember this one moment when you disappeared that time
Yeah.
in the hurricane. This woman starts giving me a lecture. If I can't watch my kids when they play outside, they just don't play. I will never have them outside unless I can be right there watching. Well, you disappeared because your older brothers and sisters were supposed to watch you, and they kind of dropped the ball because I was taking care of a baby at the time. So I found out later, Child Protective Services had warned her not once, not twice, but 3 times. If she didn't pay more attention to her kids and stop neglecting them, they were going to take them away. The same
Yeah.
parent gave me the speech of, if I can't, and my kids, I am so careful about what they eat, and I watch them so carefully, and I this and I that.
It's kind of funny because you always look at people that, talk a big game. They don't walk a big game.
Oh God.
But I have a few other like questions on parenting.
So tell
But
me, are you asking me these questions because you are starting to have those
yeah,
feelings too?
well, yeah, of course. I feel like I'm not there enough. I feel like I'm focusing more on work. I feel like, I can be there more as the fun parent right now. He's only 9 months, so it's nothing like crazy. Ruthie does a lot of the heavy lifting,
Uh-huh.
and I would try to do the best I can, but it's just like I come in and then I take him on walks and
Mhm.
I play with him and I talk with him and I change his diaper and things like that. But like
Oh,
it's nothing it's not I guess it's early stage parenting. I want to get a better grip of like,
you're doing just fine.
yeah, I understand.
There's an advertisement on the radio for people being foster parents,
Yeah.
and they give examples of parents like kind of goofing up, not seriously, but kind of goofing up. And the advertisement says you don't have to be the perfect parent to be a parent.
Yeah, I remember the
Then
advertisement.
I like the one about the father with the dinner. What? Spaghetti sandwiches again? Dad, you're the goat.
Oh
He says,
yeah.
goat. Greatest dad of all time. Yeah. Greatest
So
of all time.
I have a few other questions that hit a little deeper because I feel like if I could understand your story, I could understand my story. Does it make sense?
Yes. So,
Okay. So what aspects of your own childhood influenced the way you parent? Consciously, subconsciously, just
oh boy,
like your child, like,
what was hard. It was hard for me to. It was hard for me to parent my kids because I'll be very honest. I don't know how to say this. My parents are deceased,
yeah.
but my parents were like my mother used to say. I raised you the way I was raised. And
Yeah.
I would think to myself, oh my God, no wonder you're the way you are.
Wow.
Yeah, they had tough European parents, spare the rod and spoil the child type parents. See, we've had this before in our podcast. And
Yeah.
so I didn't really have a good role model for learning how to handle kids. How can I say it in a calm, nonviolent manner? And as I got older, I learned better. I learned pretty much by, you know, pretty much I felt away by my own, you might say.
Like how you
Yeah,
wish you were parents, maybe?
and looking at parents, just looking at other parents who I thought who were exhibiting better parenting skills than I was, and you know, some better, some worse. So the thing is, it's interesting that the fine line you have to walk. You don't want. I saw a lot of parents that didn't want to spank their kids, and so they went totally the other direction, where they didn't do anything to even non-violently discipline them.
Hmm.
And the kids were really running totally wild. And all the parents, one kid was hitting his mother constantly, and she would just go, "Don't you hit me," as he's punching her, as this little kid is punching her.
Yeah.
When one of your siblings, when he was, kid, started to do that, I grabbed his hands and I held his hands and I wouldn't let him go. Like, I held his hands very tightly and I said, my, Brer Rabbit just got caught in the tar, baby.
That's actually pretty
You know,
cute.
that's from Disney's,
Yeah, yeah,
song.
Disney, yeah.
And
Songs.
I wouldn't let him go and so then I looked at him and, no, 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 you are not allowed to do this. But this woman, she wouldn't even do that. I mean, there's nothing wrong when your kid is out of control like that, grabbing your kid very firmly and saying, no, 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 you're not allowed to do this. Now, any parent occasionally does lose it. And, you know, maybe once in a while we'll get upset, we'll really totally lose it. Give your kid one hit and then just back away. I did that once. I really lost it with one of your siblings and I smacked him. Not violently, but I gave him a slap. And then I stood and then I just stopped after that one slap and I just closed my eyes and said, "Get in your room," which he did. Okay, because the best thing is to try to there's various that's why watching Super Nanny I think is I'm sorry we didn't have anything like that in my day. I really could have used some of those parenting skills that she's putting out that she's making public. The times out, even taking a child and forcibly holding them on a timeout chair if they refuse to sit there. There was one of her episodes where some kid was really out of control and she grabbed this kid and put him in the timeout chair and he got up again, put him back. At the end of 2 hours, took 2 hours, the kid finally got the message and sat in the timeout chair for 10 minutes.
So it's interesting you said that you're talking about like you wish you had, these opportunities when you were younger. How do you define your role as a parent now that your children are adults and how that definition of being a parent changed over time?
Well, I can't exactly give you a spanking, can I? You're too big for my knee.
It's simple. It's funny that you say that because it's a very simple explanation as to what's going on. We're like, well, the parenting style, do you realize that like
I feel this way about it. You guys, in general, I try to back off because I feel this is your turn. You guys are in the driver's seat. These are your kids. And, you've got the right to raise them now the way you want to raise them. Of course, where everyone draws the line is, God forbid, criminal abuse, which chas v'shalom, none of my kids or me, no decent person would be guilty of. But the only time I kind of mix in is if you kids actually come to me and ask my advice. Then I'll give you my honest advice.
well, I was asked
But if you guys don't ask, if they say, what is it, advice that's not asked for is advice that's not accepted or something like that. I don't know how the saying goes, but right now as the grandparent, first of all, I know as a grandparent, I cannot be a disciplinarian. I tried that, by the way, with one of my grandchildren,
Mm.
and it didn't work. You, as the grandparent, unless the grandparent has custody of the child
Yeah.
and is taking, the parent, a regular normal grandparent cannot be the disciplinarian.
So
It's not their
I
place.
I was really asking not about disciplining your grandkids. I was talking about
Disciplining my adult children.
either not just disciplining, but like the
I'll
relationship
hack
you
into your
have.
bank account
I like to see you try.
if you don't behave and do as I say.
But no, I mean like like I think we've talked about this before, where there was this commercial or skit I was watching, and this woman, she just had a kid, and she asks her mother, when are you done with your children? And the mother is like, I'm talking to you right now. So how had parenting shifted where I guess you're more on I would say a deeper level with your children, trying to be a guide, be a coach, you know?
Well, I think at this point, my role is to do two things: keep my mouth shut and my pocketbook open.
And it's worked for you so far.
I don't know about that. I'm looking at my bank account numbers.
So I guess another question would be because there's this aspect of the way you can tell if you were a good parent is if your children still talk to you after they leave the house.
Uh-huh.
And so like, is there anything else you would say that you could add to that or express or expound on that phrase?
It speaks for itself that if your children as adults, can I know how I want to have a close relationship with you, then thanks God that's an indication that you were a pretty decent parent.
Well, I mean, you still had a relationship with your parents until they died, a close one.
I know I did. They were very helpful. As I think what they did also, well, in their day, I'll give you an example. Remember we talked about the feeling of the time. You
Yeah,
can't compare because the feeling of the time was, like I said, spare the rod and spoil the child.
yeah,
And I even had a professor in college. In fact, he was the professor of it was the course he taught was fundamentals of education. And I told him about um I was in Towson State used to have an experimental preschool called Lyda Hall. It was like supposed to be a very state of the art, cutting edge educational facility for preschool and maybe primary, like 1 through 3. Like I said, it was experimental. So it was like the latest techniques being tried out there. And we, every now and then, we students, we education students used to just go into Lidley Tall. And every now and then we had to pick up materials, or we would come in and we would watch classes, the see how the teachers, the preschool teachers interacted with the kids and what they did, what we thought was good, good modeling, whatever. So there was this one little girl who was laying on the floor, throwing a grade A temper tantrum, kicking her legs and screaming. And as a matter of fact, the teacher was a male teacher. He was a male preschool teacher. He used to teach in Army fatigues,
Oh, wow.
Vietnam veteran, the Army fatigues and it was very, very stylish at the time. Vietnam veterans were coming back and going to college and establishing their careers. And he had made ice cream for the class. He was ignoring her, passed out ice cream to the class. And then every now and then he would say, then as soon as you're finished, you may come over here and have ice cream with us, and then just ignore her and continue working with the rest of the kids. So I brought that up in class one time to this professor who taught fundamentals of education. And I asked him, what is your opinion? What do you think you would do? And he put his hands together and bang, like this. Boom. It takes a while to come to that thinking. It's like when the Jews in the Midbar, that Hashem realized that they had to go through 40 years to 2 generations, basically to get out of their slave mentality. And I think many of our parents at the time were into this gutless European mentality. I mean, there was a woman in my neighborhood who she came into the kitchen and she sees all these half-eaten bananas on the table. And she said to her son, "Why did you do this?" he says, I was hungry. And he took a bite out of every single little banana and left it on the table. So she goes, well, I'm going to force you to eat every banana there. And she did. She forced him to eat every banana. And all of a sudden she said his face turned red and he couldn't breathe. And she called in those days, they didn't have 911 yet. You dialed the operator, and the operator would connect you to ambulance or fire or police, and she had an ambulance, but he was taken to the hospital. He was deathly allergic of bananas. And here she had forced him to eat a whole bunch. Now, the parents used to do stuff like that at that time. And nobody would turn them over to Child Protective Services. No one, it was considered, yeah, the brat ate up all these, but now he's going to pay the price for it. A lot of parents felt that way.
Do you think that maybe some of that should still be used, or it should never be addressed anymore?
And it needs to be modified. Like, for example, when when your sister for me was like 2 years old, and she took 8 eggs and cracked them into a bowl.
Yeah.
Your father was unemployed at the time, so an egg meant something. And so I made a cake out of it, remember? Okay, what am I going to do? I made a cake out of it. And remember, I said, let me see, for me, he's a little older than you, so that's right. You wouldn't know. You weren't born yet. But
Yeah.
your older brothers and sisters, they said this cake was delicious, and how to make it. And I said, your father went, no, he said, very delicious cake. How'd you make it? I said, 8 eggs. How can you possibly use 8 eggs in a cake? I'm unemployed now. This is, 8 eggs in a cake. That's a lot. And I said to him, when your 2-year-old cracks 8 eggs into a bowl, you make a cake out of it. So your older brothers and sisters called it the Frimmy Bad Day.
Very cute. Yeah, I
Frimmy like it. She went, no Frimmy Bad Day.
yeah. It's funny because it's just like I always think about how to discipline and the evolution of disciplining.
Well, I would take, yeah, there'd be consequences, but I would have taken those bananas and I would say, look, we can't waste all these bananas. Now you are going to make a banana cake with me. You're going to use them now. And I would have had my child, take a knife, or I would have brought a bowl over. Go ahead, peel. Now you're going to peel off these bananas. You're going to put them in a bowl. Now you stir them. I'll put it, yeah, and I would have him, stir. I would have him stir the ingredients as I was putting them into a bowl. You're going to stir them, stir. Take the pan. Now you're going to pour it into a pan. Now, I'm going to put it in the oven. And I said, please don't do this anymore.
So I have a question then. Where did you come up with the idea in parenting? I know with us, more of a free range attitude. Was that just because there's so many of us, like you couldn't really keep track, or was like a conscious decision?
Range. I thought you guys, I didn't let you guys run totally wild. Did I? I remember the time you chased those rats down the alley with your BB guns.
Yeah, that was a time. I was talking about, like, I don't know. I feel like the idea of that
But
going into the
as long as your kids were being like, I thought the way you kids were creative was very interesting. Like, you guys wanted a tree house. So you took, I let you take planks of wood, nails and hammers, and you didn't build an entire tree house, but you did build a platform on top of the, like on the tree, on the big lower, like, boughs of the tree that stretched out.
yeah.
And then you would climb up there and just sit there. One time, though, I forgot who it was. One of you climbed up the tree a little too high, and you called for me. It wasn't you. I forgot who it was. Whoever one of your siblings called for me to come out and rescue him. I walked out. I looked up, and he was, not too high up, but he was fairly high up. And I said to him, I was going to teach him a lesson in life. And I said, you got yourself up there. Now you figure out how to get yourself down. And he did. He figured it out.
Yeah.
You gotta let your kid have control, independence. Now, I remember when you and Yosef went to the store to buy the hot dogs that time. It wasn't really, in those days, it wasn't too dangerous for older kids to go to a store that was like right around the corner.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know if I would do that now with a kid. in a lot of these neighborhoods. But in those days, the neighborhood was pretty safe. And so I had you take your scooter. I said, take your scooter, and I gave you the money. Go to um and that days we had a kosher meat store that was just that's right around the corner. It was on Falstaff, right around from us.
Yeah.
And I told you guys to go there and buy a case of hot dogs. So I pictured you. I should have explained this to you, but I thought you guys would have figured this out on your own. My idea was that you would take the case of hot dogs, put it on the scooter, and the two of you would wheel the scooter together back home. Instead, I look out, I come out of the door to watch you guys come back. I see you're riding on the scooter, and your poor little brother, who was like, I think 5, 6 years old, is carrying this big case of hot dogs. And you turned around and said, Yosef, come on, faster. And he's going, as fast as I can. And I called out to you, I said, Sadia, you and Yosef were supposed to put the case of hot dogs on the scooter and then wheel it together. So you did. After that, you turned around, you took the box from Yosef, you put it on the scooter, and you guys brought it up to the house. So I picked up Yosef. He was like almost in tears. He goes, I was walking down the alley with this whole case of hot dogs, and dogs came out and started chasing me. The box of hot dogs. And so I sat him on the couch and I held him and kissed him. And I said, Yosef, you worked so hard. You worked so hard. I said, here's what I'm going to do. I gave him a quarter, which in those days, quarters would be like $1 today. I said, we're going to go to the candy store and I'm going to let you buy candy because you worked so hard.
Very cute. I've actually totally forgot about that story. Not gonna lie, I totally. But it makes sense. I guess I guess maybe I was a little bit of a selfish kid growing up. It was a survival thing. I was like middle child of 10. Like you have to figure this all out by yourself. You got to focus on yourself because no one else cares.
There was a joke after 9/11 about Osama bin Laden that he suffered from middle child syndrome. He was the 20th out of 50 kids.
God, jeez, yeah. Because I always think about that when it comes to, I guess, children, discipline. But what about noticing, I guess, the negative habits that kids develop, and how do you shift them from doing those things?
Good question. Negative habits. What depends? Every parent has to ask themselves, is this the hill I want to die on? You have to pick your battles. And I've seen some parents who, I think to myself, come on, big deal. This is a nourished kite. It's not something important. To me, as a parent, I always felt the most important thing was treating people with respect. That's number one. And if your kid is talking in a respectful way, if your kid is acting in respect, if your kid has respect for other people, so what they do stupid like picking their nose. So what, big deal, you know what I mean? Maybe if they pick their nose, you might want to hand them a tissue and say, now wash your hands, this is really very germy. But you don't want to get on their case about that. There was one, as a matter of fact, there was a situation at your sister's school where one of your sisters decided not to really dye her hair like a crazy color, but when she was in middle school, she wanted to just tint it a step lighter. And when she had like light brown hair, and she wanted to tint it blonde, which it was the hair she was actually born with. She was actually born a blonde. So I didn't see anything wrong with that. So what? In fact, when I was in 7th grade for my bas mitzvah, my mother tinted my hair with red highlights for my bas mitzvah picture. She thought it looked very nice, like dark hair with little red red highlights. So the next day I get a call from the principal. How can you let your daughter dye her hair? I said, come on. I said, no, it's not. I said, it would be one thing if she wanted to dye her hair some crazy fire engine red or raven black. But I said, she just tinted it a step lighter, a little blondish. I said, there's nothing wrong with it, please. There's much more important things to worry about than a girl tinting her hair. Let's worry about mitos. Let's worry about talking respectfully. Now you're talking about something serious.
That's a whole different topic. We could talk about the issues in schooling and the obvious fails and misses that schooling has done as the educational system of, hyper focusing on, in my opinion, just stuff that doesn't really matter.
That's right.
Like yelling and screaming at kids for going to a pizza shop, when you have the chief guy in charge of tag molesting his daughter, whatever. It's just,
I agree with you totally. I feel that the schools, the Jewish schools, they're not doing anybody any favors by extending their tentacles beyond the campus. Leave the private lives of your students alone. What they do in school is your business. What they do out of school is the parents' business. I'm sorry.
yeah.
And by the way, and if you've got a kid that's attending a Jewish school who they don't keep Shabbos or kashrus at home, call hakavod, because this is wonderful that this is just the kid. This is just the Jewish kid that should be in a Jewish school, because when they grow up, now they're going to be keeping Shabbos and kashrus.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know there are some Jewish schools that if certain standards aren't kept in home, that they don't want the kids in their school. No, that is dafka the kid that needs to be in your school.
Well, it's funny. We're almost out of time, but I did want to mention something. So when we were visiting, for up in New York for Simchas Torah, we were walking home to one of my siblings' house, and we saw an ambulance. And I found out, the next day, that turns out actually it was Nabach, like a young teenager that drank too much alcohol. And apparently the parents were out of town, and they raided the liquor cabinet. And now the thing is, I think the appropriate exposure to alcohol, I think the way my father, Tati, did it, the way you did it, for me at least, was a better way of respecting it than making it more like a hidden special thing that you want to sneak around and get a hold of.
Like I always taught you kids, if you can't hold your liquor, don't drink.
Well, it was more of like my first taste of alcohol when I was 6 when Tati gave me a shot, but I just had no idea that you can get drunk off it. I just saw people do it, for bring-ins and whatnot on Shabbos. And only when I was like 18 did I start drinking. Like, I feel loopy right now, and it's something where it's just like it's the idea of showing, I guess, respect to things and how parents can do that.
Yes. I've heard psychologists say that about alcohol, that it's better for kids to actually be exposed to it and to see it consumed responsibly than to not at all until you're 21. I mean, come on. No, dude, come on. Let's get real about this. I mean, having a kiddish or whatever, or seeing like little small measures of a time. That's where I was raised. Alcohol was around my house, and I tell you the truth, I never even liked it. I decided to take a sip one time, and yeah. In fact, even now, I don't like straight alcohol. I'll take like a little slurp of it, maybe in juice or in soda or in tonic water or something like that. But I don't like straight. I'm not one for straight alcohol. Like, I just I don't think it tastes good.
Well, it's not just that. It's how, because I always kind of want to ask myself, why is it that I was exposed to so much alcohol and I never consumed it like my friends did, And I think about it ever so often. It's a thing in my head where I'm just, wondering, like, what happened when I was younger? What exactly?
Because you saw it consumed in a responsible way.
I guess I want to say that I really do, but I feel like there's a cynic in me where it's just like, maybe that's not true. But I think you're probably right. You're probably right. To be honest. But yeah, sorry, I'm still a little cold.
So I'm wondering, are they going to take legal action against those parents or no?
I don't know. Well, that was the thing. I heard the sorry. I heard the conversation from one of the guys in the shul, and he was being very aggressive about it. Like, if that was my kid, blah, 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 blah. These people are idiots. These parents are irresponsible, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of frustrated because it's just like, I guess maybe this is very naive of me, but I grew up exposed to a lot of alcohol. I grew up exposed to a lot of things like that. And because of that, there was this part where not just respecting it, but in a way, I'm trying to put it into perspective, really grasp it, but it's something that it's dangerous. It's really dangerous.
But yes,
Yeah,
it consumed, too much of it consumed, yes, can be dangerous. That's why it's important to learn to see an example of people drinking responsibly.
yeah. No, I get that. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it because it's something I'm still thinking of, because it's just like I really could have gone down a deep end and I never did. And
Yeah.
I always to ask myself why.
My father told a story about some guy in the barracks during World War II. So
Yeah.
this guy was crazy. What this guy would do is he would take like a bottle of shampoo or a bottle of anything, shaving cream. He would set a match to it to see if it had alcohol in it, if the match burned, and he would drink it.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that's an addict.
It's real crazy. My father tells us stories about some of those soldiers in World War II that were in his unit and in his barracks. Oh my God. Because the army, especially during World War II, you got people there from all sorts of walks of life, especially like Appalachia, hillbillies, you know what I mean? Farm kids, whatever. You got the army, they got some real crazy people in the army, real trigger happy, crazy people in the army.
I guess we could talk about that next episode.
Okay.
Alrighty. I love you, Ma.
Love you, honey. Have a great Shabbos.
Thank you for listening to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. Please comment and subscribe on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, and Instagram. I would greatly appreciate it, and my mother would too.